مساء الخير وأهلا بكم إلى هذه الحلقة الجديدة من واشنطن أونلاين. علاقة معقدة وتتعقد أكثر بين الولايات المتحدة وتركيا في ظل رغبة تركيا بالتأثير سلبا على مصالح الولايات المتحدة في الشرق الأوسط وأوروبا في عدة ملفات كما يرى عدد من أعضاء الكونغرس. نبحث في هذه الحلقة مستقبل العلاقات التركية الأمريكية وكيف تلقي بظلالها على المستقبل القريب والبعيد لمنطقة شمال شرق سوريا والإدارة الذاتية التي أصبحت جزء لا يتجزأ من تحالفات الولايات المتحدة في منطقة الشرق الأوسط والمستقبل بالنسبة لأمريكا في هذه المنطقة. ضيفي في هذه الحلقة هو السياسي الأمريكي ألان ماكوفسكي. ألان ماكوفسكي شغل منصب كبير الموظفين في لجنة الشؤون الخارجية في مجلس النواب الأمريكي في الكونغرس، وتحديدا في الملف التركي، في مكتب الملف التركي. كما شغل عدة مناصب في وزارة الخارجية الأمريكية مثل منصب المستشار السياسي لملف إرساء الاستقرار في المنطقة ومستشار خاص لمبعوث أمريكا إلى الشرق الأوسط. لينتقل ماكوفسكي لاحقا إلى تأسيس مكتب الدراسات التركية في معهد الشرق الأوسط للدراسات. ابقوا معنا لمتابعة هذه الحلقة. أهلا وسهلا بك سيد ألان ماكوفسكي ضيفي من واشنطن. تصريحات كثيرة متناقضة حول العمل العسكري التركي في الشمال السوري. هل تراجعت تركيا عن نواياها في شن عملية عسكرية تحت الضغوطات من التصريحات التركية، من تصريحات المسؤولين الحكوميين التركيين؟ هل تعتقد أن تركيا قادرة لا تزال تملك النية لشن عمل عسكري هدد به الرئيس أردوغان مرارا في الفترة الماضية؟
I think that very much depends on what the Russians and the Americans are saying to him behind the scenes. He has certainly talked about it. He is steadily talking about it every day. He's threatening it. He also threatened it in May. He threatened it in July. It didn't happen either time. I think whether he does it or not depends on the degree of tolerance that Russia and the U.S. communicate to him. Now, the U.S. publicly has made increasingly strong statements calling on him not to do it. I'm sure many people in your audience recall that when he staged his invasion in October 2019, that President Trump actually put sanctions on Turkey, that is, doubled the tariff on steel and aluminum, if I'm not mistaken, which are primary Turkish exports to the United States. Erdogan has to be very careful about his economy because of the election coming up in the first half of 2023. So the U.S. certainly has the means to make Erdogan think twice. Regarding Russia, in general, when Russia sets down a red line for Turkey in recent years, Turkey obeys that red line. In Libya, when the Russians said to him, "Don't go past the line running south from Sirte," they stopped. Also in the fighting in February 2020 in Syria, in Idlib, when the Russians laid down a red line, Turkey stopped, even though he said he was going to drive the Syrians completely out of Idlib. The Russians, again, are telling him not to do it. Now, there's something new in the relationship between Russia and Turkey, and that is Turkey's economic importance for Russia. Turkey is the only NATO country that is not applying sanctions to Russia. There is a lot of Russian commerce that is going through Turkey. Turkey is probably helping Russia circumvent sanctions. Could elaborate on that. So one would think that Turkey has a little more leverage on Russia now than it did before. So we will see if that is the case. If Turkey is going to confine its operation, for example, to just taking Kobani, that is under Russian control. Perhaps the Russians would concede that. I do not think that the Russians would accept Turkey going all the way to Manbij, which, of course, is a key pathway to Aleppo. But perhaps they would agree to let them go into Kobani. But so far, the message coming from Moscow to Russia is don't do it. So, and by the way, even though Turkey is important for Russia economically, Russia remains very important for Turkey and is reportedly a source of perhaps up to $35 billion in hard currency, according to some reports. Again, all of which is very crucial for Erdogan as he tries to keep his economy afloat so that he can win the elections that are coming up. And right now, he's kind of running 50-50 in the polls. So it is very important to him to maintain a stable economy, or to try to make his economy more stable than it is. And Russia is important to that. So if I had a guess, and I guess that was your original question, I don't have a crystal ball, but I would still say that it is less likely that he will go in. But, I'm not going to be shocked if he does, because he is saying it over and over again. And he does have, despite the economic reasons and the issues with Russia and the US, there are some domestic political reasons which might impel him to go forward with it. So, it's a close call. I don't have a crystal ball, as I said, but if I had a guess right now, I think he will continue to bluster, but not do it. And to be honest, I hope that's what happens.
حتى وإن لم يكن هناك عملية عسكرية برية على الأرض من قبل تركيا، تركيا صعدت كثيرا في الفترة الماضية من خلال الضربات الجوية، من خلال الهجمات المدفعية، وآذت الكثير من المدنيين في الشمال السوري. هل يمكن لتركيا أن تخدع الكونغرس الأمريكي وتفلت من أي عقاب أمام كل هذا التصعيد، خاصة أننا نسمع إدانات من عدد من أعضاء الكونغرس الأمريكي؟ لماذا لا نرى أفعال على الأرض؟
Look, I think there are a couple of reasons why we're not hearing more from Congress on this so far. One is, the overwhelming reason is the war in Ukraine. It overwhelms everything, including the foreign affairs committees right now. And so I think not as much attention is being paid to Syria. Second of all, the current Congress is about to go out of power. Today is December 8th, correct? At the end of the year, this Congress will be finished. It's what we call a lame duck Congress. We've already elected the new Congress, but it won't take office until the beginning of the new year. So when that happens, Congress is usually busy finishing up business from earlier in the year that it wanted to finish. And also, there are many members who are retiring or who may have lost their election, and they're not as focused. But I have to say, I'm a little surprised we haven't heard more from Congress on this. However, if the operation actually happens, the land operation, I think you will hear a lot of criticism from Congress. And one thing I'm quite certain, Turkey wants to buy upgraded F-16s from the United States, as I think many in your audience know, so-called F-16 Block 70s. They want to buy 40 of them, and they want also to upgrade 40 F-16s that they already have. Congress can stop that if the administration goes forward with it. I think that if they stage this land operation, I think there's no way they get the F-16s. Now, I'm going to caveat this further because it's complicated. If, however, Erdogan has already calculated that he's not going to get the F-16s, and the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Senator Menendez, has repeatedly said that he will not allow the F-16s to go forward if Turkey continues its regional aggression, as he has put it. If they stage the land operation into Syria, I think the F-16 deal is off. But if Erdogan thinks he's not going to get the F-16s no matter what he does, then that won't be a factor for him.
تراكمت خلال السنوات الأخيرة الخلافات الأمريكية التركية ليس فقط بشأن الشمال السوري، ملفات مرتبطة باليونان، احتجاج القس الأمريكي في تركيا قبل سنوات، تقارب تركيا مع روسيا، واستخدام تركيا اليوم للحرب في أوكرانيا كوسيلة للضغط على القوى الغربية. كيف تتمكن تركيا من الحفاظ على توازن في علاقتها مع أمريكا رغم كل هذه الخلافات؟ هل هو فقط اللوبي التركي، قوة اللوبي التركي هنا في أمريكا؟
No, I don't think it's about Turkish lobbies. Yes, Turkey does hire lobbyists, and it's fairly well known that they spend a lot of money on lobbyists. Frankly, I don't think they get a lot for it. The reason that the US has traditionally been indulgent of Turkey, even when it's critical, is, first of all, it's been a member of NATO since 1952. So that formal alliance, even though Turkey is not always a reliable ally, the fact that it is part of NATO is a very big factor. Second of all, just looking at the map, and I have a feeling most of your audience knows the map of the region pretty well. Turkey is located in a very sensitive area. In the mid-1990s, Richard Holbrooke was a famous American diplomat at that time, said that Turkey is at the center of every issue of importance to the United States on the Eurasian continent. I think that's a quote. And you see who Turkey borders: Iraq, Iran, Syria. It's right across the Black Sea from Russia and Ukraine. There's Greece in the west. There's Bulgaria. And of course there's Georgia, Armenia, and a small border with Azerbaijan. These are all, for the most part, areas of instability that the US has interests in. And that has been Turkey's strong suit with the US government. I don't mean to make light of it, but real estate agents in the United States, when they talk about what's important in determining the price of a home that somebody may buy, they say location, location, location. They say three reasons: location, location, location. And I think that's really the answer to your question about US sympathy and, let's say, indulgence of Turkey. It's location, location, location.
حتى لو نجحت روسيا والولايات المتحدة اليوم بتجنيب الشمال السوري عملية عسكرية تركية، ستبقى تركيا تستخدم ورقة حزب العمال الكردستاني للضغط على الشمال السوري. هل من حلول مستدامة ممكن أن تتقدم بها الولايات المتحدة أو ترعاها الولايات المتحدة، مثل عقد عملية سلام كردي تركي؟ هل هناك تقبل أكبر لهذا الطرح هنا في الولايات المتحدة اليوم؟
I would agree with you about that. Yes, that it is impacting U.S. interests for the moment more than the Israeli-Palestinian issue is. Look, we know that there was a peace effort in the first part of the second decade of this century, basically from 2011 until 2015, let's say, and what was called in Turkish an açılım, an opening. And in effect, Turkey was negotiating with the PKK at that time through Mr. Öcalan, who is in jail in Turkey, through his lawyers, through the HDP, which is a legal pro-Kurdish party in Turkey, which had contact with Öcalan through its emissaries visiting him. And I think it was a hopeful time. I think it ended, unfortunately, very unhappily, with the insurgency in the Turkish cities in 2014, 2015, and the Turkish heavy onslaught against those Kurdish cities. I'm sorry, let me back up. It ended very unhappily with the insurgency by Kurdish youth in Kurdish-dominated cities in 2014, 2015, and the very heavy-handed Turkish onslaught against those insurgencies in 2015, 2016, which led, at least temporarily, to the displacement of several 100,000 Kurds inside Turkey. So I think this promising beginning ended in a way that left both sides very distrustful of one another. And I think it will be very difficult to get those negotiations going again. Now, I hope at some point they will. I believe they will, but I don't think it is imminent. I think there is still too much bad feeling from the way the last effort ended.
أين هي سوريا اليوم والشراكة مع قوات سوريا الديمقراطية من ميزان اهتمام الولايات المتحدة وأولوياتها بالنسبة لمنطقة الشرق الأوسط؟ وماذا يخبرنا حجم هذه الأهمية عن الجهود التي قد تبذلها إدارة جو بايدن في الشمال السوري؟
I think it's critical. It's the primary aim of it is to prevent the reemergence of ISIS as a major force, the Islamic State, as a major force in the region. And of course, many people think since the territorial caliphate ended in 2019 that the problem is solved, but it's really not. And there are thousands of ISIS fighters still on the loose in Syria. And there are also about 10 or 11,000 ISIS prisoners being held by the YPG, by the SDF, I should say, in northeastern Syria. And beyond those 10 or 11,000 fighters, there's tens of thousands of family members of these fighters who themselves are potential ISIS fighters. And actually, at the beginning of this year, of 2022, there was a major incident where several of those ISIS fighters broke out of jail. And there were 2 weeks of fighting before it was put down. So it's very important for the United States to continue the relationship with the YPG because they are the most effective force fighting ISIS. And they've proven that over the last 8 years, 8+ years. I think it is important. And that's why I believe behind the scenes, the US is being very firm with Turkey about not staging this operation.
Yes.
But, of course, time will tell.
تركيا تتذرع بأن الرئيس باراك أوباما لعب دورا أساسيا في تدهور العلاقات التركية الأمريكية حين عقد الشراكة الأمريكية مع وحدات حماية الشعب، متجاهلا حساسية المسألة بالنسبة للجانب التركي. هل فعلا هذا كان الملف القاسم للعلاقات التركية الأمريكية، أم أن تركيا أخذت بالتوجه أكثر نحو عقد علاقات مع أعداء وأنداد الولايات المتحدة، وأخذت خطا إسلامويا متشددا في عهد الرئيس أردوغان، وهو ما أدى بشكل أساسي إلى تدهور العلاقات؟
Yeah. Look, there's a lot in your question. Let me break it down a little bit. Regarding how the U.S., whether the U.S. should have gone to the root of the Kurdish problem first, the U.S. relationship with the YPG, which later then grew as it took on Arab and Suryani members and some others as well, became the SDF. The relationship began almost as a fluke when in the autumn of 2014, when ISIS was sweeping across northern Syria and was about to conquer Kobani, the United States asked Turkey to go in and save Kobani. Actually, the Pentagon had said that it didn't consider that area strategic. Turkey, and what I think was, if a Turkish diplomat were honest, would admit was a huge blunder, refused the U.S. request to go in and save Kobani. Turkey refused the U.S. request to go in and save Kobani. As a result, and particularly as domestic pressure in the United States grew, as we were seeing on TV every night, the horrible pictures coming in from the destruction of Kobani, finally, the U.S. decided to go in with aircraft and work with the YPG. And the end result was the US-YPG combination turned out to be a beautiful thing in terms of the fight against ISIS. They drove ISIS out of Kobani. And ultimately, that partnership led to the destruction of the territorial caliphate in its Syrian component. In its Iraqi component, of course, the US's main partner were the Iraqi Kurds, the Peshmerga. And that was really how the relationship began. It was about fighting ISIS. It wasn't, to be honest, about the U.S. trying to solve the Kurdish problem. However, I would like to add, if we have time, that it is important to understand that at the time the relationship began, Turkey, as I said a few minutes ago, was actually negotiating with the PKK about a settlement of the Turkish-Kurdish problem inside Turkey. So I think there was more of a feeling that this would be something that would be tolerated. And beyond that, Turkey had hosted the political component of the YPG, the PYD. Turkey had hosted Salih Muslim, who was the head of the PYD at the time. Perhaps he was he headed the foreign affairs portfolio, but he was the face to the foreign community of the PYD. Turkey had hosted him twice. So I think that the US had some cause at that time to think that Turkey might distinguish between the YPG and the PKK, and anyway would be tolerant of a US relationship, just as the US distinguishes between the YPG and the PKK. The US, as again, likely your audience knows this, the US, like Turkey, considers the PKK a terrorist group. But unlike Turkey, the US does not consider the YPG a terrorist group. Was there some discomfort? Yes, I think some US policymakers did feel uncomfortable about partnering with a group that our NATO ally Turkey considered terrorists. But to be honest, I talked to a lot of people, including policymakers and Obama administration policymakers. Nobody has really been able to explain to me how we could have defeated ISIS without the YPG, unless we were willing to send US soldiers and risk thousands of casualties. So, to be honest, we provided the air power. Some 10,000 or more YPG fighters, SDF fighters, I should say, because not only YPG, have died in this effort to save the region from ISIS. And I don't think ISIS could have been defeated without the US-YPG partnership. Now, just very quickly, you asked me, did it lead to a deeper break between Turkey and the United States? I think, yes, Turkey came to see, from the beginning, saw the YPG simply as part of the PKK. And to this day, when Turkey talks about the YPG, they usually just call it the PKK. And there is probably nothing that Turks resent more about the United States at this time than this partnership with the YPG. But I think it was a necessary one. And I think the US does have to put more effort into finding a way, a modus vivendi, so that the autonomous region, the AANES, can live in peace with Turkey. I think it's not easy to do because I think Turkey does not want a Kurdish-dominated autonomy on its border under any circumstance. But it ultimately accommodated one in Iraq. And perhaps over time, if some non-PYD, non-YPG Kurds can be better integrated into the AANES, perhaps there will be a way over time to put the Turks at ease about this too. But it won't be easy, and yes, it has been a factor in several of the other problems that have been created between the US and Turkey.
نعم، شكرا جزيلا لك ضيفي السيد ألان ماكوفسكي، كنت معنا من واشنطن عبر سكايب.
Thank you, Adil. It was a real pleasure. شكرا.
وفي الختام شكرا لكل من تابعنا اليوم، ألقاكم في حلقة قادمة، إلى اللقاء.